All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you all for joining us during the Lytham Partners Spring 2023 Investor Conference. My name is Robert Blum, Managing Partner of Lytham Partners. During this fireside chat, we welcome Acasti Pharma, ticker symbol of ACST on the NASDAQ, and their CEO, Prashant Kohli. We'll dive into questions in just a moment, but do want to remind everyone that if you've not already signed up for a one-on-one meeting later today and would like to do so, you can send me an email at Blum, B-L-U-M, at lythampartners.com. Click on the lythampartners.com/virtual. There's a one-on-one meeting request button there. Click on that and we'll look to get you taken care of there. So with that, let's begin. Prashant, welcome.
Thank you, Robert. Really appreciate the opportunity and look forward to connecting with the audience and you.
Fantastic. Before we begin, just a little bit of background on yourself here.
Yeah, happy to do that, Robert. So I have 20 plus years in the industry. Started my journey on the drug commercialization side, specifically new product launch strategies, end-to-end, defining the value proposition of a development asset, marketing, including pre-launch, launch, and lifecycle management strategies, sales from a deployment standpoint to ongoing management of the sales force, market access, including health economics and outcomes research, trade and distribution. So the full gamut of the commercial spectrum, if you will. I've worked on the launch of a rare disease drug from Alexion called Solaris. Another drug, Xtandi, which was a co-promote between Medivation and Astellas, the first oral oncolytic for late-stage prostate cancer. And again, much larger market drugs like Niaspan in cardiovascular space, Androgel for low testosterone. And some of the companies that I work with include IQVIA, Cardinal Health, Architect, and Grace Therapeutics, prior to joining Acasti. And it was at Grace that I collaborated with a team of scientists to build the business case, the investment thesis for our pipeline, assets in rare diseases, including GTX-104, which is what we'll be talking about today. Grace was acquired by Acasti in the fall of 2021. And that is how I landed in the company and eventually in my current role as a CEO a few weeks ago.
Perfect. Thank you for that background there. As you mentioned, Acasti's lead drug candidate is GTX-104 for the treatment of aneurysmal subarachnoid hemorrhage. For those unfamiliar, please help people understand this indication.
So subarachnoid hemorrhage is a devastating acute brain injury. And it really strikes out of the blue. The classic symptom, the sign is a worst headache in someone's life, usually described as a thunderclap headache. It involves a burst of a berry aneurysm deep inside the structures of the brain, where the aneurysm ruptures and then spills blood in the brain. As you can imagine, it's a very serious condition, high mortality and morbidity. Patients, the rule of thumb is a third of the patients eventually do not survive the rupture. A third are living with long-term morbidity around the condition, and a third end up surviving fine, surviving okay. So that is a brief description of what subarachnoid hemorrhage is. Invariably, the patients are treated at a comprehensive or an advanced stroke center. These are highly specialized hospitals, academic medical centers, most of them that treat for this condition. And it involves a neurosurgeon, an intervention to secure the bleed, the hemorrhage, if you will. It used to be more craniotomy, which is open brain. The movement has been more towards endovascular procedures, minimally invasive surgery that requires clipping or coiling the rupture, and the patient is in the hospital on an average of at least 2 weeks.
Thank you for that. First off, let's sort of go into your drug now, GTX 104. Maybe first, before we sort of get into all the how it works and how it's administered and stuff, just a little bit of background on the development of the drug itself. You mentioned a moment ago, Grace, but maybe just sort of expand a little bit more on the overall development of 104.
Sure. So in this patient journey that I described briefly, that really started off with a surgical intervention, the only pharmacotherapy that is approved to treat the symptoms, to manage the symptoms associated with subarachnoid hemorrhage, or SAH, is a drug called a calcium channel blocker called nimodipine. Nimodipine has been on the market for over 30 years. The drug is widely prescribed. The Joint Commission mandates the use of the drug. So as part of treating the patient, this drug nimodipine is there's no choice there. The hospitals administer this drug to the patients. It's given for up to 21 days. That's the therapy of this, the course of treatment for nimodipine in SAH patients. The drug currently in the US is available only in an oral form, either as a capsule or liquid. And there are a lot of issues around the delivery of this drug in this patient population, which we can talk about in a bit, around the specific unmet medical needs that are out there. But just to give the context or background, nimodipine is an extremely challenging compound to work with, insoluble, very, very difficult to give it parenterally as an infusion, for example. The team of scientists at Grace, when I was at Grace, really a fantastic team of formulation experts. They really cracked the code and figured out how to solubilize nimodipine using aspects of nanotechnology and a micellar form. And this aqueous formulation of nimodipine, again, first ever in the world. We have a solid patent estate as well, backing that. So now this drug is solubilized in an aqueous form that can now be given as an intravenous infusion. And as you can imagine, we'll discuss it in a bit. The advantages of giving this drug as an infusion as opposed to oral in this specific patient population. But that's the quick kind of background around the genesis of the drug. The founder of Grace Therapeutics, just a personal kind of element to the story, his mother passed away because of a subarachnoid hemorrhage. So it was a personal quest for him to solve some of the intractable problems with nimodipine, and in a passion that and a zeal that he brought to the table to try and help advance the care of SAH and improve the outcomes in SAH patients.
Well, let's sort of dive into that more. So, talk through the details of how the drug works. You mentioned now it being a sort of an IV administration, and sort of just expand exactly on why the need for IV exists and your solution is needed in the market.
Yeah, great question, Robert. So let me start off by describing the current issues with giving nimodipine in the oral form, in this patient population. Starting off with, this is a critically sick patient population. Based on our primary research that we conducted, about a third of them are unable to swallow the drug or are presented unconscious to the hospital. So having to administer a drug to an unconscious or a dysphagic population is extremely cumbersome, and a lot of times nurses have to deliver the drug through a nasogastric tube, which presents a whole other set of challenges. In our phase 1 studies that we conducted, and this is very widely known in published literature as well, the bioavailability of nimodipine when it is given in the oral form is extremely variable. And what that means is that not sufficient amount of drug is getting into the system, crossing the blood-brain barrier potentially, and not doing what it's supposed to do, which is improving neurological outcomes associated with a rupture of the aneurysm. And with an IV form, obviously you bypass the issues of low bioavailability or highly variable bioavailability, and that is a major advantage and a clinically relevant value proposition to this patient population. Not only that, there is published literature that has demonstrated that the drug, when it's given through a nasogastric tube, the bioavailability is even lower than when it is swallowed orally or in a patient population that is able to take the drug orally. Just to put it in context, the dosing regimen is fairly high for this drug as well. 60 milligrams every 4 hours or up to 21 days. Now, these are 1 gram pills. Colloquially, they're known as horse pills because they're just massive. And trying to administer this drug, 2 pills every 4 hours, places an extraordinarily high nursing burden as well, including patient inconvenience. There are other issues with nimodipine. It has cytochrome P450 liability. These are enzymes that interfere with drug metabolism. So there are drug-to-drug interactions. A lot of the drugs that this patient population is on already, could interfere with the oral form of nimodipine. I just want to, remind or just stress that, subarachnoid hemorrhage invariably afflicts a younger population than ischemic stroke, which is something that is far more prevalent. So you have a younger population that, again, the issues could be really, exaggerated, especially from a morbidity standpoint, quality of life standpoint. So getting back into the unmet needs. So drug-to-drug interaction. The other issue is food effects. The drug, again, when it's given orally, there again it interferes. The absorption is interfered with food, so it has to be given 2 hours before and 2 hours, after the meal is given. In addition to that, there is a effect of the drug, which is something that the drug does, is a drop in blood pressure. Now, in initial stages, when patients are presented, with hypertension, invariably during the rupture, the drug does help reduce the blood pressure. But then, as it is administered over a number of days, every 4 hours, the drop in blood pressure can be a significant issue in this patient population. The drug, when it's given orally, once a patient ingests the drug, all bets are off in terms of trying to control the effect that it has in the body. And this is where GTX-104 and IV infusion really helps address these unmet needs that are out there, in the patient population. Specifically, it's an IV form, 100% bioavailable. In our phase 1 studies, we have demonstrated the ability to deliver an amount of drug, GTX-104, that would result in comparable efficacies. The PK parameters of AUC and Cmax typically are used to make sure that the two drugs that are being compared have a similar PK profile, but at a fraction of the drug substance. GTX-104 relative to the oral, can be administered in a patient that is unconscious, that has a hard time swallowing, As you can imagine, in an ICU setting, physicians, neurointensivists, nurses prefer to deliver a drug through intravenous because they know the amount of drug that has to be given will be in the systemic circulation. And because it's an IV administration, physicians can better manage or address issues that might arise because of hypotension, where they could, in almost near real time, manage hypotension by titrating the IV dose. So that is in my conversations with with numerous neurosurgeons and physicians across the country. I've personally visited the major high volume stroke centers, and in conversations with them, that is a value proposition that resonated with physicians in terms of being able to better manage hypotension. And again, just to remind our listeners, a significant drop in blood pressure, is a major issue in any any patient, specifically in this one that's afflicted by SAH. A lot of times, rescue therapy has to be deployed. Sometimes they have to be given vasopressors to prop their blood pressure back up, and also angioplasty to pop open the artery so blood flows. These are very expensive, very challenging rescue therapy that has to be deployed to manage hypotension with the oral, and we expect that with the IV, some of these issues could be mitigated. Right. Not only that, the other issue when a patient does get hypotensive, sometimes, and in more than half of the instances, and this is widely available in published literature, the nimodipine therapy is withheld from the patient. So here you have the only drug that is known to improve neurological outcomes associated with subarachnoid hemorrhage, is oftentimes not given to the patient. Doses are missed or are significantly titrated down. Instead of 60 milligrams, sometimes they drop it down to 30 milligrams or withhold it altogether. From our standpoint, we believe that with GTX-104, these issues get really mitigated, and the patient will be on therapy for a lot longer than they have been on, or that they are today with the oral form.
No, thank you for that sort of extensive sort of overview here. And I want to touch on phase 3, your upcoming phase 3 in just a moment. But I think one of the important points here is that GTX has 104 has orphan drug designation. Maybe just provide what are the benefits that this has provided to the company in the past and will sort of on a go forward basis here.
Yeah, so we believe that getting an orphan designation in this particular case, really pulls together the business case, pulls the investment thesis together for why GTX-104 is not only really kind of addresses the unmet medical needs that I outlined earlier, but it also is commercially viable. Again, in our primary market research that we conducted, we believe the addressable market to be close to $300 million within this patient population for GTX-104, and a big reason for that is to get an orphan designation. Just to clarify, orphan designation means that once the drug is approved, from that point onwards, we will have 7 years of market exclusivity for an IV formulation of GTX-104, and that we believe is a significant competitive advantage. And not only that, we have a strong patent estate as well. So the two of them, really help pull together the business case around a active compound, nimodipine, that has been available, like I said earlier, for over 30 years. But there is a clear recognition from the FDA as well. It's not easy to get an orphan designation when there is a generic capsule available. There is a liquid version of nimodipine being available already in the market, but the FDA recognizes the value an intravenous delivery of nimodipine in SAH patients, the clinical benefit, the meaningful contribution to patient care that it would have. And we were granted an orphan designation by the FDA for those reasons.
Perfect. You recently submitted your phase 3 protocol to the FDA. Help people understand what the expected timelines are for commencing the study here.
So a lot of the pre-work in terms of phase 1 studies, we have dosed GTX-104 in over 150 healthy subjects, and no issues from any serious adverse events. Very comparable side effect profile as well to the oral. We recently were informed by the FDA when we submitted our packet to them that our phase 1 study that we conducted early part of 2022 may have met the scientific bridge criteria, which is significant for a 505(b)(2) application. You need to establish a scientific bridge with a reference listed drug for GTX-104, that is the oral capsule of nimodipine. That cleared the path for us to submit a complete protocol with all the documentation, the information brochure, updated CMC information, and all the other supporting documents that the FDA requires to review. And upon final sign-off from them, we expect to kick off our phase 3 study in the second half of this year, 2023. The nature of our study, nimodipine is already proven to be efficacious in subarachnoid hemorrhage patients. So we're not planning on doing an efficacy study, but based on our prior conversations, communications with the FDA, a safety study is what is required. We believe is required to file a successful NDA upon completion of the study. So that is what the phase 3 study is a safety study in about 100 patients that we expect to conduct in about 20 to 25 sites across the country. And anticipated start is latter half of 2023.
Fantastic. You recently made an announcement to implement a strategic realignment plan, which, amongst other things, extends the projected cash runway out to calendar Q2 of 2025. Can you sort of help investors understand this realignment here?
So upon taking over as a CEO for Acasti, my first task on hand was to do a bottoms-up review of our strategy, of our resource allocation, and talk to investors as well, and the market, including bankers and analysts. A big part of that analysis, that assessment, took into account the macro factors that we're dealing with. It's still a very challenging investor environment for biopharma, for the microcap biopharma. And we had to make some tough and sweeping decisions from a strategy standpoint of the company. There were 2 other pipeline programs that Acasti had acquired from Grace that I was intimately involved with as well, GTX-102 and GTX-101. As part of the strategic realignment, the board agreed that we had to, really protect the shareholder interest in terms of not raising capital on with toxic terms, which is what the prevalent situation is for a company in our situation. And we really had to really double down on our lead program, our lead asset, which happens to be the biggest value driver for Acasti as well. That is GTX-104. So it started off with a really comprehensive, holistic review of the company. Obviously, it helped because of my deep experience with all of our pipeline assets, going back to my Grace days, And the board concurred that the decision for the company to focus on GTX 104, deprioritize our other assets, restructure, realign the company so that it is an agile biopharma that is working on a single late-stage asset was paramount for us to be successful. Not only that, making sure that there was a team in place that has the skills and expertise, specifically in subarachnoid hemorrhage and GTX 104, so that we can hit the ground running with credibility and move as quickly and efficiently and cost effectively to execute the GTX 104 safety study was paramount. And those were the key tenets of the realignment. Number one, to again prioritize our program, our assets to our lead value driver, 104, restructure the company so that it was more nimble and agile, and leveraged its partners, to execute cost effectively, making sure that there was a team in place. Number three, that could hit the ground running, and four, to make sure that we were able to, really extend our cash to, significant value drivers. So based on our current set of assumptions, that is what we expect that to be, in the first half of 2025. To take the GTX 104 program, given our current assumptions, we expect to be filing our NDA, right around that time as well, assuming that everything is greenlit from the FDA, in the next several weeks, and then for us to begin our study in the second half of this year.
Perfect. In the couple of minutes we have remaining here, maybe what are the key milestones that investors should be looking for over the next 12 to 24 months?
So again, first things is first patient in. I think that is a big milestone for us, a catalyst, later this year, and enrolling our sites, making sure that we have our target sites fully enrolled. This is a safety study, just to remind everybody. We will report out at the end of the study, and it's comparative safety. So we do not need to show superiority. We just need to show that GTX 104, is just as safe as oral. So a biggest catalyst for us is going to be starting the study, later part of this year, completing the study. We expect it to be a relatively short study. Last patient out, to filing our papers. We're looking at early 2025. So that's the trajectory, Robert.
Fantastic. We've only got a minute sort of left here, but anything else that we have not touched on that might be helpful to the listeners here?
I just want to reinforce that GTX 104 nimodipine itself is a clinically de-risked compound. It's really important to note because most of the studies have to prove that the active compound shows efficacy, is clinically superior to standard of care. We're working with a compound that already is de-risked from a clinical standpoint. We have safety data from our phase 1 studies in healthy subjects. We have an orphan designation. We have a strong patent protection, and favorable reviews from key opinion leaders and our scientific advisory board that what we're working on will lead to a meaningful improvement in patient lives.
Fantastic. So we'll leave it there. Prashant, thank you very much for the time today. We greatly appreciate it. Again, I just want to remind everyone out there that if you've not already signed up for a one-on-one meeting here and would like to do so, again, send me an email, bloom@lythampartners.com. Visit the website, lythampartners.com/virtual. Click on that one-on-one meeting request button. We'll look to get you taken care of. Again, we hope you all enjoy the conference today. Prashant, thank you very much once again.
Thank you, Robert. Appreciate it.